Talk about Devilman.
As I stare into the eyes from the coming apocalypse, I see them reaching for my soul. I cannot erupt, I must control. I cannot erupt, I must explode.
One thing I particularly like about Devilman is how demons having emotions and relationships is not some third act twist. It's a truth laid bare as soon as Akira gets his powers. Akira's demon has a name, it's Amon, and the other demons know Amon. One demon goes so far as to weep for Amon losing his individuality to Akira, only to be slaughtered a few seconds later. Despite the fact that Akira and Ryo insist demons don't have feelings, the first major antagonist, Siren, actually has to struggle against her fear of Akira in order to fight him. And when her back's against the wall, a handsome gentleman swoops in out of nowhere, proclaims his love for Siren, and then sacrifices himself just so she could continue to fight. If that's not love, I don't know what is. And even though Akira can't fully comprehend what just happened, he understands that it was something beautiful. Instead of saving the "humans are the real monsters" twist for later, they quickly begin showing all the ways demons and humans aren't so different. A good thing too, because a story as short as this benefits more by getting to the point. While we're primed to root for Akira going in, the premise of humans being unambiguously good and demons being completely evil was always easy to question even early on. Partly because we're supposed to root for Akira. Just think about the title for a minute. Devilman. Like Superman or Gotchaman, but devil instead. I grew up in a time where good guys having demon powers or other spooky abilities was pretty commonplace, both inside anime and manga and in plenty of other sources. So it's easy for me to take it for granted that a quote-unquote evil power doesn't make a person evil, and I can't substantiate if this wasn't any less common back in the day, but considering that this is a trope that spits in the face of preconceptions anyway, it suits the story's purposes already. Despite his noble intentions, ironically, Akira ends up using the same methods as the demons he hunts. Take an enemy body and use it to slaughter their kin. Although he hasn't begun to understand the demons or even humanity going into this fight, in his perspective he's a soldier fighting to stop a genocide. He doesn't know that the demons, despite their violent and offensivistic nature, view themselves very much the same because, as we come to learn, their situation isn't that much different than humanity's. Devilman as a whole is a largely cynical work, as most people, demons, and humans kinda suck in the end. And nobody besides the Faceless God and his army come out as winners. The opening tells us that the strong devour the weak, and by the end that hasn't changed. The story is a tragic, cautionary tale of what happens when we forget or refuse to acknowledge the humanity in our enemies. And with that in mind, it's unclear how much Akira truly understands this himself. Even our main character, whose defining characteristic is sympathy, might not be as sympathetic as he should be or could be. But that's because it's not easy. Taking every moral nuance into account will inevitably eat up your time and energy, and that makes your goals harder to achieve. Akira can only remain a man as long as he continues to cry and feel guilt over the violent acts he commits. No matter how noble, heroic, or necessary the actions are, if he loses touch with what those actions literally do to people, he will become a devil. And that's why Gene-Man is a perfect mini-boss for Akira. Arguably the biggest scumbag in the entire franchise, Gene-Man tortures the souls he eats by placing them onto his shell, where they continue to live in a horrifying and irreversible state. He uses this ability as a tactic to fight humans. His defensive shell isn't actually that strong, so he hides behind a wall of hostages, leveraging their guilt and compassion against them, taking full advantage of that weakness. There is no way to save the souls of those trapped by Gene-Man aside from killing him. They're already dead. So the course of action is obvious. Akira eventually builds up the resolve to kill Gene-Man by pulverizing his weak spots. But even so, Akira agonizes over this choice. It's hard to kill a demon when he's wearing the crying face of a little girl. His agony at the mere sight of this tragedy and his reluctance to carry out his duty is proof that he's still a man. The end of the fight clearly demonstrates a split in Akira. His demon side sheds no tears, but as long as his human side does, he won't ever lose his way. And yet it's easy to argue Akira is just being inefficient. If he just sucked it up and attacked sooner, the fight would have been far easier. Satan originally sided with the demons because he sympathized with them, and he would do whatever it took to save them. even rebel against God itself. But because he made that his mission and adamantly defended it for so long, he started to lose sympathy for the little things. After all, his job becomes easier if he's willing to value other people less. He was once like Akira, but he no longer cries when he's forced to take a life, or forced to sacrifice something. He's a pragmatist, and sympathy isn't pragmatic. While this viewpoint can't help him console Akira whenever Akira is too hard on himself, it's also the compass that made him the villain he is. His compassion only returning for a short time he spent as a human. Despite his noble sympathy for demons, he became a hypocrite for imposing the same fate on humans that God gave the devils. Ryu and Akira are both at the same time too sympathetic and not sympathetic enough. An antagonist from the lesser known sequel, Devilman Lady, insists that power is ugly, and as long as humans choose power, they will inevitably become the demons they loathe. And this framing applies to the original work. Nuclear weaponry and our progression to it in and of itself can be a parallel to demonhood. And in the final volume, humans out of fear and panic eventually end up committing disgusting acts towards demons and humans they suspect are demons, which is a lot of them. An unreasonable number, in fact. And it climaxes with the death of the character who represents humanity at its best, at least outside of the Devilman.
To catch these hands! Yeah, you so damn stupid! What is
Miki is clearly supposed to represent the good of humanity, but at the same time, she's more than willing to cut a bitch, and she's not afraid to hide how horny she is. It's not that Miki isn't a perfect girl, but that these obvious flaws aren't that bad to begin with. Sex is natural, and self-preservation is the most logical thing in the world. But I love the way she's framed with these flaws, because if Akira's love for her more broadly represents humanity, then you should accept the good, the bad, and the clumsy. You could even attribute Miki's ability to stand up for herself and her friends as the inspiration to Akira's brand of justice. It's only the irredeemably evil and paranoid he condemns. We're not all moral paragons of virtue, but that doesn't mean we can't be good people. And even people who are less than good can still be redeemed. The Delinquent Boys are a straightforward and lovable example of this. A group of troublemakers that find cause worth fighting for and then commit to it. From stealing lunch money to killing demons to shielding an innocent girl from a witch hunt. It's not necessarily that humans hide how terrible they really are. While it's natural for us to hide our faults or even natural for us to be mistrustful, it's also natural for us to be reluctant. When we find ourselves doing terrible things, we might hesitate and reconsider or feel guilt. Now, hesitating doesn't erase our sins if we follow through, but it does show potential for us to say no or to stop ourselves before it's too late. What is arguably Devilman's greatest strength as a manga may be its brevity. It gives a thrilling gore-fest apocalypse story with a couple shonen battle sequences alongside a handful of thoughtful themes illustrated in a provocative way. And it's also campy in all the best ways. Like when Akira addresses the reader directly and tells them how much darker the final volume will be. I don't know how intentionally humorous it was meant to be, while also being pretty cool at the same time. That's a real sweet spot for campy stuff to fall into. And it all begins and concludes in just 5 volumes. It's about as short as I can imagine a shonen battle epic to take. While this does mean some of its ideas aren't as fleshed out as they could be, that's not damning, and many of its spin-offs and sequels and remakes go further into some of the less explored ideas. So you'll get a stellar experience no matter what level of engagement you give this franchise. So thank you all so much for watching, like and sub if you'd like to see more, and I'll see ya in the next one. Hopefully.